One night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the ghost engine that he encountered. Thomas looked over to Edward, trying to wake him up. "Edward?" Thomas whispered. Edward slowly opened his eyes. "Yes, Thomas?" Edward said. "I need to tell you about some things that I saw." Thomas explained to Edward about the train crashing into the sheds and the ghost engine. Edward thought for a moment, and then he said, "I've seen that engine before, and I've heard of the dreadful backstory of this unfortunate engine." Thomas listened as Edward told the history of the ghost engine. "The engine that you saw, Thomas, was built a long time ago, before you came to this island, and the first steam engines like us started working here. The engine didn't have a name, a number, or a face. Some people say that this was due to some experienced workers who built this engine. Over the next several years, the engine worked very well with freight and passengers. But then, things started going wrong for the engine. One day, his safety valve burst. 2 weeks later, his valve gear had jammed. And then a few weeks later, his boiler bolts came loose, which causes his boiler to leak steam. Months went by, and the more parts that the engine was fixed, the more that the other parts failed and broke. The engine was getting frustrated that the inexperienced workers were not building and taking care of him properly. So one day, he hid in a siding where no one could see him for many days and nights, and he waited until the time was right for his revenge." "So, his revenge was what I saw?" Thomas asked. Edward sighed dreadfully. "Yes, Thomas. He plotted his revenge by crashing into the shed that he was built and fixing. The workers were in that shed cleaning up the shed, and they were all killed in that tragic crash. Nowadays, many workmen says that on late nights like this, you can still hear the engine's whistle blowing in the distance, and sometimes you could see the ghost train with its red lamp flashing and going to the shed that the construction workers built on the place where the old shed was. But he never gets repaired.